Hey guys, what's going on? So in this video, we'll be learning about mutable and immutable data types. So mutable data types or objects can change their contents inside it once they have been assigned, while immutable data types or objects cannot be changed once they are assigned. So before we move on, one should remember that there's a clear line of distinction between assignment and changing the contents. So when I say first name equals to Amy, this is what we call an assignment. That much we know. Now if I do first name equals to Sharon, is this an assignment or we are simply changing the content inside first name from Amy to Sharon? Now this is one of the many concepts inside Python that trip many beginner level programmers, and let me tell you that if you are coming from C++ domain, you would definitely consider that when you do first name equal to Sharon, you are actually changing the content of variable from Amy to Sharon. But in Python, it's simply a reassignment. To make it more clear, let's understand what exactly happens when you do assignment versus changing the content in Python. So let me go ahead and comment this section. Okay. So when you assign a variable with some value in Python, the Python variable will point to the memory location where this object is stored. So when we assign first name equals to Amy, first name is actually pointing to the location, memory location where Amy is stored. Now, when you reassign a variable with some value, the memory keeps on changing. That's because in Python, when you reassign a variable, the variable will point to a new particular memory location where this new value is stored. So when we typed first name equal to Sharon, let me go ahead and uncomment it. So when you did first name equal to Sharon, now the first name variable will point to the memory location where Sharon string object is stored. Now we can print those memory locations, or rather I should say a unique ID representing those memory locations by making use of the ID function. So first of all, let's print out the ID of first name. So when we assign the variable first name with object string object Amy, first name will point to the memory location of Amy. Now let's print that. It will print me the memory location where Amy is stored. Let me go ahead and clear the screen. Okay. Now we reassigned first name to a new string object called Sharon. Now if I print the ID of first name, you would notice that although both the variables are same, but their IDs would be different. But why? Why did this happen? Now, if you recall correctly, I told you that when you assign a value to the variable will point to the memory location where the object is stored. So Amy was stored at this memory location. So when we printed out the ID of first name was pointing to this memory location, and hence it printed out the value. Now when we introduced a new object, string object Sharon, to the first name variable, what first name did was it stopped pointing to this memory location and instead started pointing to the memory location, this one, that is 175, a big number ending with 20, and this actually is the address where Sharon is stored. So first name stopped pointing to the memory location of Amy and it's now pointing to the memory location of Sharon. Now, if you're more observant enough, you may ask, now what happened to Amy? Well, whenever Python variables stop pointing to a particular memory location, that memory location is automatically cleaned in a process called garbage collection. Python does this thing automatically. Now, this is a short overview of what happens when we reassign a variable. Now, this is very different from what happens when you change the contents. So when you change the contents, then the underlying memory location won't change. We will take a look into this now shortly. Hence, those objects whose states or contents can be changed is called mutable, and those in which you can't is called immutable. So clearly, string is immutable since we didn't really change the content of first name, instead we reassigned the value. Okay, so let me clear the screen and let me show you the mutable and immutable objects. Okay, so these are the mutable and some of the mutable and immutable objects. Mutable objects include list, dictionary, set, classes. Immutable objects include int, float, string, boolean, tuple, and range. Now to show you that changing contents in immutable objects result in an error, let's try to change the first character of that previous example. So if I type first name equals to Amy, let's change the first character to some other character of 0 equals to, let's say, B. Now remember what we did right here. is not an assignment since the underlying memory is still same when you access the content inside a string. So when I do this first name of 0, we are not actually assigning the value b to a new variable first name of 0. Instead, we are taking the variable first name and we are just changing the content inside it. Now, if I try to do that and if I try to print first name, you will notice it will throw me an error. Reason, string is an immutable data type. You can't change the content inside a string. You can only reassign that value. So if I do first name equals to bmy, now this is valid since we are completely creating a new object string and we are now pointing to that object's memory location. Okay, now let's try changing the content of a mutable object. For that, let's take a list 1 2 3 4 and then we will print this id and we will try changing the first value to something like 4 and then we will once again print the id of lst. If we were to run it, you will notice that both the IDs or both the memory locations are same. So as you can see, there is no error, and if we print the ID, you have seen that it's still the same. So mutable objects can be changed in place. So this is what I mean by changing the contents inside the variable list. When I say mutable objects can be changed in place, I mean we can change the contents inside those variables without reassigning. So here, as you can see, we didn't reassign anything. We just simply took the same list, same variable lst, and we changed the first value to 4. This would not have been possible with string or float, integer, or basically any immutable object. And all these kind of changing the contents is possible inside mutable objects. Alright guys, I hope you understood the difference between mutable and immutable objects. And mutability and immutability concept is not just localized to Python itself. You will also find these concepts in different programming languages. Like in C++, we have mutable and concept of immutability. But the fact that Python uniquely deals with them is because of the way it refers to the objects. And if you really like this video, you can do a couple of things. You can really, the easiest one is you can simply like and subscribe the channel, and you can also spread the word to others who really want to learn Python. It will be a really great help to us for our channel to grow. Alright guys, see you in the next lecture.